New sermon series today. Lucky you get to be here, and glad that you're going to be. It's going to be good stuff. Hey, my name's Tom. If we haven't had a chance to meet, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. But we believe the best way to live life is following Jesus, and Jesus gives us clear ways on how to live life, especially in regards to money, wealth, all that good stuff that we're going to talk about for the next few weeks. So I'm glad that you're going to be a part of what is going to happen. So if you were to walk around our fine city of Iowa City, I'm sure it wouldn't be really hard if you were asked people if they could use a few more dollars. They would probably say, yeah, I could use a few more dollars. Yeah, I could use some money, extra money. I think we all would kind of fall into that, if someone offered you some money, you'd be like, yeah, I could use some more. There's an understanding, I think this at times, you probably do too, but we feel like if we have a little bit more money, that we'll be a little happier, and that our life will be a little more content, a little more fulfilled. So there's always this idea I could use a little bit more. And when you start looking at the different lives and the different people that live in our city or maybe are even here, you can get that. I mean, I have huge respect for the college students. They don't want to have a lot of student loan debt and all that stuff when they're done, so they could use some more money. And they're gnawing on ramen noodles. So it'd be nice to have a little bit more money. And I appreciate the single parent. My word, how hard that is sometimes, and the respect I have for them for trying to make ends meet and how difficult it would be. And of course, they could use some more money, help out with child care and all the things that go with that. And even two-parent incomes, can be really challenging with all the kids and the activities and the things that can go on. Yeah, it'd be great to have a little bit more money. And we think, if I could just have a little bit more here, a little bit more here each month just to make ends meet. Yeah, that's something I think could all agree on. But if I was to say something to you, if I was to look at you and to say, you know what, I know you want more money and I could use some more money. If I were to tell you that you were rich, you would just look at me and you would laugh. You would say, no, there's no way. I'm not rich. We could name a lot of other people that are rich, but I wouldn't be rich. But yet, maybe you are. And maybe that's the issue that we need to deal with, is the fact that you're rich. And doesn't that just sound weird to even think about? So let's put that into practice here. Let's try this. I want you to turn to the person next to you. If you're not sitting next to anyone, you can talk to yourself. I won't judge you. But I want you to turn the person next to you, and I want you to say these words, 3 words. Just say, I am rich. Go ahead and try it. Just kind of verbalize it. Say to that person next to you. Yes, the laughing. Our initial response is, this is ludicrous. I'm not rich. I'm not rich. It almost feels like you're lying to the other person that you probably know them. And they're like, yeah, we're not, this isn't rich. Yeah, it just feels so wrong to even consider the fact that you could possibly be rich. And here's why. It's hard to get our minds around the fact that we may really be rich, is that it's hard to see wealth in the mirror. There's a lot of things that's really hard to see in the mirror, because you just see yourself and you see what you want and what you need to become the person that you think you should be. But the reality is just this awareness of who you are and what the reality of your situation is. You're rich. You're rich. Let me I'm going to tell you a story, and I want you to see if you can identify where we're going with this, okay? 1866, England. There was a young woman that was brought to this doctor. His name was Dr. Gull, Sir Dr. Gull is his last name. But they brought this young woman to him because she was dying, and he was their last resort. He had some unorthodox practices. He would make observations, and he would just try to take care of the patient to try to figure out what was going wrong, to kind of figure out the symptoms and what was happening. And so as he is observing, he's trying to nurse her back to health, and it takes weeks, and it takes months, and in fact it takes 2 years before she is really fully, completely recovered. And after observing and taking notes and helping her and being there bedside just to check in on her and help her, he comes to the conclusion. Now, to help you understand what's going on here, this is a woman that her pulse rate is really low, but her organs are functioning. Like, so much of her body is functioning well, her nervous system is well, and her appetite is strong, and yet she's clearly dying. And so he makes all these observations, and he comes up with a diagnosis. And it's a new disease. It's something that has never been identified, labeled, even really understood before. And yet he's the one that makes the discovery. And he gives this new disease a name. It's called anorexia nervosa. Anorexia nervosa. We just simply know it as anorexia. And in our country today, over 8 million people struggle with anorexia. And so what he determined was there was this thing that got into the patient's brain. It wasn't a virus per se, but it was this belief, this lie, this understanding that they had to change something about their appearance. And the best way to do that was how they controlled their eating. And he said they got really good at it, okay? They really could lose the weight. But the reality is that as they looked in the mirror, they didn't like what they saw. And they thought, you know what, I just need to lose a few more pounds. Now, if you want to do a little research on this, it's really pretty fascinating, the story behind it. But it was kind of this perfect storm that happened in the mid-1800s. In England and around the United States, it was this movement of people moving from an agricultural background to cities, to urbanization, is one of the things that happened. The other thing is more money. People began to have more money, more freedom to use money, excess money to spend on different things. Another thing, a third thing, is the rise of periodicals, magazines, okay, newspapers with pictures in them. And so they got to see what other people were seeing and images about how to look. And then here's the fourth thing. You'll laugh at this, but the invention of the corset. Yes, image, body shaping. And it was in that moment that all of a sudden his diagnosis of anorexia began to pick up, and they were able to identify it around England, around the United States, around the world. But here's what's so fascinating about it, and it's maybe a misconception, because I remember when I was a kid and I first was going through a dictionary or an encyclopedia, and I saw pictures of people that were anorexic, and when I looked at the definition, I couldn't connect the dots, because you look at that and you're like, no, they're not fat, you know, they don't have this issue. And anyone here that's maybe struggled with this or has a family member that struggles with it, you go through the same thing of trying to understand this, of get your mind around it, because what you're seeing and what they're seeing is two different things. And the misconception is a person with anorexia thinks they're fat. That's not true. It's not that they think they're fat, that when they look at themselves in the mirror, they see that they could just lose a few more pounds. You know, that if they could just lose a few more pounds here and a few more pounds here, that they'll look a little bit better. You and I, we struggle with the same exact thing when it comes to our money, okay? But it's not a weight issue, it's a wealth issue. And so as we look in the mirror, we determine, like, if we could just have a little bit more money, that our life would be a little happier. If we had just a little bit more money, if we could take care of some of these bills, take care of some of this debt that we got ourselves into, then life would be better, and we'd be happier, and things would be just more complete and content and fulfilled. And so that's what we tell ourselves. But the reality is, it's just the opposite. We're rich. And so when I tell you that, and when I tell myself that, you just absolutely laugh. But what is rich? What is it? What does it mean? What's the definition of it? And that's the problem. It's a moving target. The reason you and I struggle with this issue is because we are comparing ourselves to other rich people. Do you get that? So we live in the most wealthiest time in the history of planet Earth. There's never been a time when there's so much overall global wealth. It's ridiculous. And you live in the best, the most healthiest, the richest economy on planet Earth. So just connect those dots. It's amazing. You're so blessed. You have so much because you live in this country, in this time, in this period. And so we're rich. I mean, think about, you've heard the phrase first world problems, right? We talk about our first world problems. I want you to think about some of your first world problems. Just think about them, okay? My Wi-Fi, it needs to be faster so I can stream Netflix, right? I need more, you know, it keeps buffering. It's not fast enough, you know? My cell phone battery, it just won't last all day, you know? I'm just ticked off because that battery, it cuts out about noon, and I'm missing out on so much social media, you know? It's killing me. So I need more. And, you know, I think we need another car. You know, this one's like 4 years old, you know, and It's got a few years, a few miles on it. I think we need another car. Wait, you need another car? 2 cars? 3 cars? How many cars do you need, And then if you have a teenager, you can totally relate to this. My teenager comes home, opens up the refrigerator. It's full, but she says, "There's nothing to eat. I'm starving and there's no food here." And I come over and I'm like, "No, what do you mean? There's this. No, I'm hungry." Now, if it was empty, we could get in our car and in less than 5 minutes be at an amazing grocery store with all kinds of food from all over the world that's fresh, that's healthy, that's not so healthy, and then that's pre-cooked, that's ready to eat right away. And we could be home literally within less than a half hour with all the food we could imagine. And it would last for days and days. Do you understand how amazing it is, but what our problems are? Now, I want you to take your package of first world problems that you have right now, and I want you to pack them with you, and we're going to get on an airplane, and we're going to fly to some remote place in the world. You pick, wherever you want to go. Remote place, and we're going to land that plane, we're going to get into a Jeep or a Land Rover, and we're going to go out into the bush, we're going to go out into the jungle, we're just going to go, until we find a little village all by itself, isolated, dirt floor hut, and you're going to go in there, and then you're going to look at them, you're going to have a conversation, and then you're going to describe to them your problems, okay? Describe your cell phone problem, your lack of food problem, and they're just going to look at you like, what are you talking about? Do you understand what I'm saying? When you start comparing ourselves with the rest of the world, you're like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're not rich? You need more? More what? It's a comparison issue. It's a struggle that we all have. The true story, Bill Gates went to visit India. He went to a little village outside of one of the cities, and he actually randomly went into this woman's house, knocked on it, obviously, went in there, and they began to have a conversation. They talked about India, the economy, healthcare, all kinds of things. And then when Bill Gates left, one of the richest men in the world, one of the reporters said to the woman, this Indian woman, said, "So what was it like to have one of the richest men in the world in your home talking to you?" And she just looked at him bewildered, and she says, I talk to Americans all the time. They're all rich. Okay, do you understand what's going on here? You and Bill Gates are like the same around the world. Do you get that? Like other people in other parts of the country, they put you and Bill Gates in the same breath. We think of that, we just laugh. Like, no, there's Bill Gates, here's me. But other people look at us and, well, they're just like Bill Gates. I talk to Americans all the time. So it's a matter of perspective. It's understanding that maybe you are rich and you just don't really fully grasp and understand that. So I want you this afternoon, if you get a chance, go to theglobalrichlist.com. We're going to put up here on the screen. We're going to do this little exercise. Love this website. And so the median income for Iowa City is roughly $60,000. Okay, that's right in the middle, $60,000. We're going to type that in. Take a look at where you fall into the top category of wage earners in the world. Less than 1%, 0.19% is where you fall if you're 60,000 or above. So get your mind around that. Just think about that. Think about this. One third of the world's population makes $2 or less a day. 1/3 of the world's population makes $2 or less a day. That's crazy. You're rich. You're rich. Rich beyond imagination. But why isn't that you don't feel rich? What is the struggle? Why do I have a hard time getting my mind around it? But again, it goes back to the comparison. It goes back to how we have grown up and looking in other people that are rich. So what we're going to do is kind of try to quench that thirst. Actually, there's a really good quote. I should read this to you if you have. It's in your notes. But it comes from Arthur Schopenhauer. He says this: wealth is like seawater. He says the more we drink, the thirstier we become. And that's exactly what happens for all of us. So what we want to do is this. And I want to be really honest with you. I'm not trying to guilt you. I really am not. So if you feel guilty, just kind of put that to the side. This isn't about guilt. This is not arm twisting. This isn't trying to convince you, of how bad you are. That's not it. Because the reality is We're rich. It's just that we're really bad at being rich. Do you understand the difference? Like, this is a sermon series that we're going to spend the next few weeks on called How to Be Rich. It's not how to get rich, it's how to be rich, how to live as someone who is rich. And this is a really important discussion because Jesus said a lot of stuff about wealth and about people who are rich. He said to his disciples, he said, it's more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom. It's just like a camel going through the eye of the needle. So what we know is being rich is something that is really hard to do well. And you and I realize that because we point to people who make more money than we do and we complain about how they spend their money. You know what? To other people in the world, they look at you the same exact way. And so what we want to be is different. We want to be like how Jesus lives life. We want to follow after his example. And if being rich is hard, then we want to learn how to be rich well, to do it as best we can. We want to be good at it. So for the next few weeks, we're going to unpack that. We're going to look at that because actually the Bible has a lot to say about how we handle our wealth. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to turn to 1 Timothy. Now, let me give you a reason why we're going to 1 Timothy. First of all, Jesus gives us the best way to live life. So we follow him. And one of Jesus' followers is this man by the name of the Apostle Paul. He started a number of churches in the first century. And one of the churches he started was in a city of Ephesus, a rich, very wealthy city. And the church took off, did really well. Well, Paul was really good at kind of establishing, he mentored a lot of young men and left them to be pastors in these churches that he started. And so in 1 Timothy chapter 6, we're going to read part of this letter that Paul wrote to one of his proteges, a man by the name of Timothy, who is pastoring the church in Ephesus, and he's teaching them practical things like how to live and how to be husband and wife, parent, but he's also teaching them how to handle their wealth, their riches. And so we're going to look at how he teaches that. So we're going to take the next few weeks and study this section of Scripture, so it'd be good just to kind of hang out here and get comfortable with it. Hey, the other thing is, too, is I want to give you more resources. I think this is such an important thing. I want to provide you with as much as possible. And a couple of things I want to point you to. First of all, the outline for this whole sermon series is based upon a book called How to Be Rich. So you can Google that, pull that up in Amazon, whatever resource you use. Just consider this. For me to tell you a book, and you can bring it up on your device and buy it and be reading it within seconds means, you guessed it, you're rich, okay? So if you can do that, you're rich. But you should read this book, How to Be Rich. Andy Stanley wrote it. And again, the series is kind of outlined off of that. And if you want extra resources to dig into, that would be a great one. And one other resource for you, there's also a video series that goes with this that you can use as a personal Bible study or if you have a group of people. And it's in our video Bible study platform called Right Now Media. And again, it's called How to Be Rich. I'm going to put that in there. And if you are not a part of Right Now Media, use the white info cards there, the white first step cards. Give me your email address. I will send you a link so you can get that and you can use this information throughout the week in your kind of personal time to do some more study. Can you tell we're serious about this? Like, this is a big deal. We want to be good at being rich. And so if you have any of those questions, just make sure and let me know and we'll provide those resources for you. So let's look at what Paul has to say, what he teaches about what does it mean to be rich? What does it mean to be rich? And how we can begin to take steps towards being good at being rich. So here we go, verse 17. So 1 Corinthians 6:17. Here we go. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. So to begin this journey of being good at being rich, the first thing you have to do is understand that everything comes from God. And this is a shift that has to take place. For a lot of us, we still struggle. I'm in the same boat. We struggle with putting wealth and our ability to make wealth at the center of our lives. And what Paul says is, listen, people who live that way, they're arrogant because they look at their own abilities and their strength, and it's a control issue. I can make more money. Because anyone here in this room who knows, who's ever been in that struggle of not having enough money or thinking you need more money, you just say to yourself, well, I'll work harder, I'll get another job, I'll do whatever I can to get a raise, we'll try to get ahead. And it goes back to your abilities, your strengths. And then realizing that it's money that is going to give you happiness and success, all those things that you're looking for. Does that make sense? And so a lot of us struggle with that. And it's a control issue. But he says, listen, don't do that because it's arrogant. Because just like that house of cards can fall, and then you're in a world of trouble. He says, instead of putting money at the center, you need to put God at the center, because God created you. He gave you the ability to work. He gave you your job. He gave you the resources to make the money, to have the things that you have. That God is the giver of every good thing, and that he needs to be at the center. So it's the shift that needs to take place. Now, if you're struggling with this, I understand. We all go through this. And one of the symptoms that you can tell where money is at the center of your life is if you worry about it. If you worry about not having enough money, or worry about paying the bills, then money's at the center. Now, Jesus had a lot to say about worry and about wealth and possessions. In fact, in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, Jesus says, listen, seek first the kingdom of God and all righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. In other words, he says you need to make the shift. Don't worry about all your possessions and all your money. He says, in fact, put the kingdom of God first. And then all this other stuff will kind of work its way out. And so if you're a worrier, and I get this year I've thought more about money than I ever have. And as I was putting this lesson together, I was kind of embarrassed. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. I'm going to talk about it. But this last year, I've worried more about money. And it's just that whole shift that you go through. Like, who are you going to trust? Who am I going to rely on? My strength and ability? Or I'm going to realize that everything comes from God and I need to trust him more. Just to give you an example of how prevalent this is in our culture, this is Sports Illustrated came out a few years ago with these numbers about professional athletes and their struggle with wealth. For example, in the NFL, almost 80% of NFL players within 2 years of leaving the NFL are either bankrupt or struggling financially within 2 years. NBA, same thing. Within 5 years of leaving the NBA, an NBA player, 60% NBA players are bankrupt. 60%. And I want you to think about that. Why is that? Because these are athletes, incredible athletes, who've built their entire lives and their careers upon what? Their own abilities, to be good at their craft on the football field and the basketball field, to be dependent upon their ability. And when that's gone, the center of their universe is gone, then everything just begins to crumble in. And as soon as you and I think, well, we would never do that. You know the numbers for those who win the lottery? Same kind of deal. People that are instantly rich, they fail so quickly because we're just not good at this. And we think money is the answer, the solution to everything. So Paul is very clear with the Christians there. Listen, you need to make a shift. Don't be arrogant about wealth. Instead, remember, everything that you have, that car, the house, your clothes, that job, it comes from God. Put him first. Put him at the center. And if we're going to be good at being rich, we every day have to remember everything comes from God. So we pray before we eat, right? Thank you, God, for this food. It's this centering that everything comes from God. Thank you, God, for what you give us. Okay, so that's the first step, understanding that everything comes from God. And then look what he says in verse 18. Very practical teaching. He says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to share. So he gives them kind of a 3-step plan of how to begin to evaluate where to go. Because for you to go in a new direction, to find new life, to find this new way of living, you have to figure out where you are. This realization, like, where am I? And how am I doing now? And so Paul says, listen, here's what they have to evaluate. Here's what they have to look at. He gives 3 parts to it. Did you catch them? It says, be rich in good deeds, be generous, and then be willing to share. So here's what I want you to do. For you to get on this new path, to figure out how to be good at being rich, you need to figure out what's my current state. And so this afternoon, hey, it's going to be snowing, okay? So let's just take some time this afternoon and open up whatever software, however you track your money. And I want you to do some evaluation and use those 3 parts. First of all, good deeds. Good deeds. I want you to figure out on an average month, how much of your time do you give towards service? Just do an evaluation. How much time? How many hours? Is it an hour a week? So is it 4 hours in a month? How many hours do you give towards service? And that service could be towards the local church, which could be us. Maybe it's some of the different community organizations that are here. Maybe it's to your child's school. Where are you volunteering? Where are you helping? Where are you giving of your time to serve others? Figure that out and then put it on a scale. Okay? How much time? Is it good or bad? Is it on a 1 to 10 scale? 10 being great. And remember, as you make that little chart, Jesus is looking over your shoulder. Okay, just remember, how good am I doing? How am I giving away my time and my energy? And then Paul said, number 2 is to be generous. To be generous. And here's the fun one. What's the percent? What's the percent of your income that you give away every month? Okay, what is it? From your gross income, how much? What's the percent that you give away? Is it 1%? Is it 2%? 3%? Is it 5%? What is it? Are you giving 10% away? Figure that out. Figure out what your percent is, and then scale it. Where does it fit on the scale? Okay, am I a 2? Am I 1? Everyone goes to 7 because we feel good at 7. We're not a 10. We're not a 5, but 7's always where we seem to land. But where are you on giving? What's your percent? Now, I want you to know something as you try to figure that out. There are people in our church that give 10% of their income, and then on top of that, give to missions, give to things like Compassion Kids that they support. So just remember that. I've even heard stories of people that are trying to shift their percentages where they live on their 10% or they live on their 20% and they give away 80, they give away 90. So understand that people are starting to get this and try to figure out how they can be more generous so they can give away more of their income and live on less. So consider that when you rank yourself on your scale, that there's the opportunity to be very generous with what God's given you. So good deeds, being generous, and then here's the third one he says is willing to share. Now, I know this one's kind of hard to measure on a monthly scale, but figure out your willingness to share this last month. How were you able to share? Were you able to share a meal with someone? Take them out and buy them a meal? Were you able to maybe share some of your tools, share some of your time, share some clothes? How are you able to share with your neighbors, people around you, maybe someone in the church? And then kind of put that on a scale. And I want you to just figure out how you're doing in these 3 areas. Because what Paul says is these are areas we have to evaluate and begin to work on in our lives if we are going to be good at rich. And I want to be good at rich. I do, because that's who Jesus is, and that's who Jesus was, and that's how he showed us to live. In fact, he did that for us. And this is why I want you to pursue this, because I think maybe some of you are thinking, what's the big deal? I'm doing all right. Why does this even matter? Over the next few weeks, I'm going to give you a lot of reasons why this matters, but I want to give you one really important one as we wrap up, and that's this. I think a lot of us here would agree, I just want to be happy. I just want to have this happy, fulfilling life. A lot of people would acknowledge that. And who doesn't? I want to be happy. That's great. This matters in regards to your happiness. And Jesus said as much. In John chapter 13, it was the night that Jesus was betrayed. He is walking up the stairs to the upper room to share this Last Supper with his disciples. And as he's going up the steps, all of his 12 disciples are arguing amongst themselves about who's the best, who's the greatest. Kind of sounds like the whole who's the richest kind of thing, right? They're all arguing, and they get up into the room, and they're all sitting around there having their conversation, and then very quietly, Jesus takes on the position of a servant. He strips out his outer garments, and he grabs a basin of water, and very quietly but very firmly he begins to wash each of his disciples' feet, cleaning them, scrubbing each and every one of his disciples' feet. And when he's done, he puts his garment back on, and then he says these words. John chapter 13, verse 33, he says, or verse 17, he says, now that you know these things, he says, now that you know these things, in other words, now that you've seen what I've done for you, that you've experienced it, he says this, you will be blessed. You will be blessed if you do them. You will be blessed if you do them. The word blessed can very simply and easily be translated happy. You will be happy if you do them. So what Jesus, in maybe the most simplest of ways, has just described and demonstrated is that if you want to be blessed, if you want to feel happiness, and if you want to feel that fulfillment, then you need to learn how to be a generous person, to be good at being rich. That's where the happiness is. That's where the fulfillment is. And guess what? Time Magazine picked up on this same exact understanding. Back last summer, July 2017, they ran a big cover story that said on the cover of Time Magazine, it said that generous people are happier people. So I guess Jesus knew what he's talking about, right? If Time says it, Jesus understood it, that these generous people are happy people. So that's why I want to help you be good at being rich, and we're going to follow Jesus and his example as we do that. So as we wrap up, I'm going to give you a couple steps that you can take if you want to begin to take this journey. First of all, as always, I'm up here. We'd love to talk to you after the service just to kind of figure out how we can help you individually take that next step of faith, of maybe flipping your life around and following Jesus. In the chairs in front of you, there's these little white cards called First Step cards, and that's exactly what they are. They're just first steps to beginning to change. Any kind of change, any kind of transformation, it takes that first step. And so we want to help you do that. So share any information you're comfortable sharing. If you want to know more about our church, hit the engage box, mark that. If you want to explore, just ask all kinds of questions, because I know that sometimes you have questions. We'd love to have coffee with you and talk about those questions, so mark the explore. But maybe you're just ready to figure out, I think I believe in Jesus. I want to figure that out. We'll mark that section, and we'd love to take some time and talk to you about that. On your way out, there's a welcome table. Just drop your card in that black box, and we'll make sure and follow up with you this week. But let's not miss an opportunity today to follow Jesus and learn how to be good at being rich. Heavenly Father,